Welcome to the June 8th edition of the PFF Forecast. I'm recording live from a house of a member of the syndicate, so you know it's going to be a special podcast. We've got some fun stuff to talk about because we've got some bets that we're placing, so you can get ready to rock there. I also have a very strong take about the Warriors-Celtics finals game tonight, so if you're listening to this live or not live or whatever you're listening to this, you'll probably know that I'm already wrong there. So that'll be very exciting. It's going to be a great show. We're also going to talk about some player props for this season in terms of leaders in passing yards, leaders in rushing yards. It'll be a lot of fun. Okay, enough of me rambling. Let's rock. Eric, I am recording live from a friend of ours' apartment in Southern California, a member of the syndicate. But the only condition upon which I could stay here was that you have to, at some point during this podcast, bring Brett Favre into the podcast. That's the only way I was able to even get a bed to sleep on tonight.
I kind of want to guess who it is because there are like friends of yours that like our tweets and stuff. And but for now, I think it would have been better if you were the one trying to guess who it was, and I could just go maybe after every one of them.
Right.
That would have been the way to get Brett Favre in there naturally. Otherwise, we're left watching the Tucker Carlson show where he resides currently.
That would be a rough podcast for everybody. I think you could guess who this is. I think it's probably honestly, the leader of the syndicate. This is someone that does not miss a show. Like that's the type of person we're talking about right now.
Okay.
So you know this person, but you don't quite. I don't think you've met this person actually in person. This is great podcasting, by the way. This is tremendous. This is why
this is tremendous podcasting. I will take the balance of this 45 minutes or so to remember. Or just to guess who it is, and I think I'm going to get it.
Yeah, thank God. By the way, so you've had two things that you've managed to figure out over the past week. One of them is how to cope with getting crushed in the WNBA, and the other is how to put a ring light into the proper position.
Space.
When I logged into Zoom, the ring light was directly behind you.
It was, and yeah, it was great.
You got a PhD in math, right?
Not my parents did I joked a couple times on air today and through meetings and stuff that I was in my mom's basement. I'm actually in like the guest room now, which used to be at one point my room, growing up, and I was I'm gonna be here for the balance of like the next couple months, so I might as well just get the things set up. So. I did a show last night and I didn't have it set up, and it was dark, and it was just like, I don't care, whatever. But for this show, I got this thing set up. That shows people how much I care. I gotta say though, although I did go for a mile run just before this, my hair is I did not get my hair cut to the specifications you did. Holy buckets! That is a well put together set of hair, George.
I appreciate it, and you'd be happy to know I didn't even get a haircut. This is just me, me doing my hair. Yeah, and I traveled today. I'm just doing it big for you. Really, I want to impress everybody.
I gotta say, I put Hims in my hair, or Keeps. I think it's Keeps or Hims. I can't remember which one.
Both, just to
I
be
alternate.
safe.
I alternate just like a good defense. A defense against hair loss. I throw numbers at the situation and then let the weakest link die off.
I couldn't tell you the difference between Hims or Keeps, to be honest with you. Although one appears to be less sexist than the other. Okay, where would you like to start today? Because we have a couple of different, hypotheses that we are betting, and the people need to know. The people need to capitalize on these opportunities. Where do you want to start?
Okay, we're not gonna. We've already, and I tweeted the link out to the podcast where we talked about the Cleveland quarterback. but I just want to tell
Putting the dog in dog pound, to be honest.
Yeah. But I do want to give the syndicate I want to give the syndicate something right now, and it is put one unit on the Bengals and the Ravens to win the North, right? I don't think the quarterback is going to play for them this year, right? And even if he does, is he that good? After 1 year off, Stefanski, that offense is different than the one that he had in Houston. Again, 2 years ago. Pittsburgh's terrible. Going to be terrible, I think. And so both of them, so if you go to our friends at DraftKings, it's 2-1 Bengals to win the division. Ravens are plus 210. So okay, you can figure out how likely it is that Cleveland and Pittsburgh win the division, and basically what the payoff is. If if you put 2 units down on one of the two and then you lose both, if they win, what's the likelihood that is the case, and all that kind of stuff. I think right now it's all qualitative, right? All qualitative. We don't know what's going to happen, but I've already done this, and I think you should. I think that this is a sound way to operate.
I think the syndicate should move in. Remember how it was the anyone but Mac Jones syndicate?
Yeah.
This is the anyone but the Cleveland Browns syndicate. Yeah. And I would take, you mentioned the Steelers there. I'm going to bring the Steelers into this. We had a conversation about coaches, right? We were ranking coaches. And both of us think incredibly highly of Mike Tomlin for what he has gotten out of, this team. They're not bereft of talent. But let me remind you that at one point, this team, okay, now, granted, they were overrated in this situation, but they were undefeated with Ben Roethlisberger through 11 games?
Mm-hmm.
That we can, we were right on them being a completely overvalued team at that point. But in a situation where, look, the Bengals are going to have the dreaded lost in the Super Bowl hangover. The Ravens, look, we're both bullish on the Ravens. They're plus 210. Your third favorite. The Bengals are plus 200. But if I'm going to take a team at 11-1, which is what the Steelers are right now, the makeup of that team that I want is with a coach like Mike Tomlin. Because if there's any weakness or any unluckiness that happens to the Bengals or the Ravens, they'll be in a position to capitalize because the Tomlin floor, which is I think what we've got to call it, is so high. And they're upgrading at quarterback. Mitch Trubisky is going to be an upgrade at quarterback for them simply because he can throw the ball more than 5 yards downfield. So I'm not opposed to betting all three of them and just fading the Browns completely.
You're getting 11-1 on the Steelers. I think this is also an instructive time, to talk about how, it's not about who, it's about what the cost is, right? We've never been big Steelers, supporters here, but at 11-1, they might be worth at least a little bit of a sprink on the division prop. I'm not a big fan. I'm more look, I'm more than happy if the Steelers win the division to lose 2 units on it. Whatever. I'll pay to see Mike Tomlin take that ratty ass team to the playoffs again.
Well, while you pay for it, you can pay me for it, and I'll be taking my winnings to Las Vegas Cabana near you.
Yeah. Okay, the next one, and both of these articles are on PFF.com. Both of them have been published in the last 2 days. One is why NFL bettors should feel comfortable backing the 2022 Detroit Lions.
Oh, I didn't know you felt this way.
I know we've talked about this. The one thing that I found, and again, we've said this a lot of times, there's some nuggets in there. I hope folks will get a PFF Elite subscription and go ahead and pay for it. One of the things that was kind of interesting is Jared Goff has never had a PFF grade above 52 in a pressured pocket. Now, I kind of find that to be extremely weird given how oscillatory it is. And for Goff, in a strange way, his clean pocket grade 89.5 in 2017, 93.6 in 2018, 83.4 in 2019, 88.2 in 2020. 2021, it was 70 and a half. Now, that drop off, is that Goff getting worse? Because the 88.2 clean pocket grade in 2020 is exactly what Sean McVay decided he had to piece out from, right? Basically, his third highest graded season from a clean pocket. I think that I'm more than happy to attribute the drop off in clean pocket grade to the fact that they didn't have great receivers last year, and Goff was injured a lot. So he faced pressure 33% of the time. In 2020, he faced it 31%. So that's 2% difference. No, Taylor Decker didn't play a lot of the season. Frank Ragnow played 4 games. You add them to the mix. Halapoti Vaitai is in there as well. Like, I think you can get that pressure rate closer to 30 than in previous years. And if he's grades like, let's say, a 50 in pressured pocket rate, but he gets the clean pocket grade of like 80, let's say. Let's just split the difference. Like, this is a much different quarterback than we were used to before. And I think that that's going to do wonders. And furthermore, I think that the schedule, this is where we see like knockoff effects on things. Not having to play a good schedule. Basically, all of their games, let me look exactly, their games are the second easiest in the NFL. Every team that they face, on average, is 0.9 of a point worse than the average team on a neutral field, on average. Only the New York Giants have an easier schedule. They don't play a game after 1 p.m. Eastern as well, right? So, like, you're going to miss some cold night games and all. But also just you're going to have and they never leave the Central or Eastern time zone. To me, it just makes a lot of sense in this number, and this is where I want to get to lastly, because everybody knows we're on the lines. But I want to sort of go through a little bit of the gambling parlance as well, because I think that there is some teachable moments here. So on Caesars, at least when I printed this, there was an over 6 at -135. FanDuel was the best number of the legal books I could see at 6.5, which is -105. And we said like a heuristic is about 50 cents per win, right? Mm-hmm. So in theory, or per half win. So over 6 should have been like -155 on Caesars. So you're getting -135. And we actually think that one has, what is it? -135 has an edge of about 10.1%. 10.1% for over 6.5. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. There's a little bit of a typo in there, but like sort of go read that and sort of talk about where it talks about sort of like how much break even versus what you end up getting in terms of an edge there.
I see. I mean, I think the schedule point is really sound. The Jared Goff thing. Under pressure, he's been bad there his entire career. And for me, it's less about that as it is, the opportunity for him to be better from a clean pocket is massive. And I feel good about him over the course of his career actually having done that. Last year, by far his lowest graded season, right? Mm-hmm. And that shouldn't surprise anyone. He's had a grade over 70 in all but his rookie season, which was with Jeff Fisher. But he was 28th in PFF grade from a clean pocket last year. And it's just been something where if you dig into this a little bit more, from a clean pocket, this is kind of crazy. Just 2% of his throws were big time throws. And that's by far the lowest in his career, again, since his rookie year. The NFL average is 3.8. I'm not saying that Jared Goff is an average NFL quarterback, but I also think he's way closer to average than, and he might actually be average. I could see Jared Goff, at some point in his career being Kirk Cousins, where I would expect that to regress positively, especially what we've seen from him. And to your point, in order to have, we talk about this a lot, right? So he was 31st in the NFL in positively graded throw rate. And we see that positively graded throw rate along with big time throw rate is something that is not stable from year to year, whereas negatively graded play rate is. Now, he was dead on average in negatively graded play rate. What does it take for you to be a plus in the positive category? It takes opportunity. Like the Tom Brady with receivers that can't get open is only going to do so much. Tom Brady with an awful offensive line is only going to do so much. To me, with that bad schedule, the improved complementary pieces around him, this is where I see that juice kind of coming in. So I like that. I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, the point about the schedule is that, like, if you're playing weaker teams, you're going to be in fewer long yardage situations on third down. You're going to be in fewer situations where you're trailing. You're going to be in fewer situations needing a touchdown at the end of the game or half, and so the pressure rate that you're going to get is going to be lower. Okay, so I got to get this right though. So over 6, right? So minus 135, that requires a 57.4 non-push probability of non-push events going over. We, in our simulation, have them going 7 wins or more 62.7% of the time. However, we have them winning exactly 6 games 23.4% of the time. So under 6, 23.4% of the time. So the push probability, if you take that out, we have it going over a non-push event 72.8% of the time, which is, basically a 15% edge, which is different than over 6.5 means you need to take the 62.7 that they go 7 or over, and 6 is a loss. Break even for minus 105 is 51.2. So that represents only like an 11.5% edge. So like I said, the 50 cents per win is really a good heuristic, and it sort of shows up here in which one of these wagers you would prefer.
I'm glad you got that figured out.
I don't. Some people come in and they get mad when
If you couldn't have gotten that figured out and you had the ring light snafu, that would have been tough.
It would have been rough.
Before we get on to the next one,
go ahead.
Reminder that it's June. Okay, it feels like it's a long ways away from football starting. It's not. 92 days today, and fantasy football is going to get started even sooner. But a lot of you play fantasy, and that means you have to deal with waivers and trades and start-sit decisions and all that crap. Go play best ball. Best ball at Underdog Fantasy is the best way to prepare for the NFL season because you see how people are drafting in money leagues, but you also don't have to do any of that in-season management crap, and you can win a ton of money. $10 million in total cash prizes for Best Ball Mania at Underdog Fantasy. By the way, the guy that won it, or it might have been a gal that won it last year, drafted in June. So the time is now. In fact, I believe that's a trend zone. So you'll want to make sure you draft in June. You should not draft in any other month. And here's the thing. If you use promo code PFF when you sign up at Underdog, your deposit will be matched up to $100. And if you use promo code PFF when you play 10 of those dollars, you will get a free PFF subscription. That is a ridiculous deal. I continue to tell you this every single week. If you haven't used it yet, the time is now. Promo code PFF at underdogfantasy.com or download the app. The app is great. Best Ball is a fantastic format for you to play, so go make that happen. Okay, next bet that you want to talk about.
Yeah, so the other one we talked about briefly is the Dolphins. We put this up here. 9, there's a couple bets that are on the board. DraftKings has them at 9, and it's minus 125 to the under. Whereas I'm trying to think of the FanDuel has them at 8.5 with plus 110 to the under. So, in this particular one, again, with the 50 cents per half win, this is one where we have them going 8 or fewer wins 54.6% of the time. Plus 110, it has a 47.6% break-even probability. So there you're getting about 7%. And it's a little bit, I believe, a little bit smaller for the 9 under minus 125. Because, again, I think that this team for the Dolphins, again, we talked about their schedule last year. But for the Dolphins, I think the biggest thing is there is like a fat tail of and somebody asked on Twitter, a fat tail means, basically a distribution where the extremes have a higher probability than what they would have in a normal distribution. So in a normal distribution, basically any event that's outside of 3 standard deviations has like a 99.7, so a 0.3% chance of happening. A fatter tail means that like three standard deviation events, they don't happen very often, but they happen more frequently. And that, that's something that folks learned during the last, during the 2008 housing crisis, which was, when they were using the Black-Scholes equation, and all the normality assumptions were oftentimes violated by the correlations that, let's say, your house, you go foreclose on your house. Like there's a ton of math that says, like, if a bunch of things are independent, then their distribution becomes normal. The sum of their distribution becomes normal. But obviously, like if you go, a bunch of people don't get foreclosed on independently, right? Like a plant goes out of business, and so you get foreclosed on, your neighbor gets foreclosed on, so on and so forth. And so there were a bunch of assumptions that were like fat tail events that people were pricing at much lower rates of happening because they were assuming a thin tail. If they've assumed a fat tail, then some of the payouts on these, like, shorting that kind of those situations would not have been as big. So I think that, like, the Dolphins have a decent opportunity to win a lot of games. I just think on average, they're not going to win 9 or more games.
And I guess the interesting thing here is certainly, I mean, it all comes down to Tua, right? So let me ask you this question. If you who is the worst quarterback that you could put on the Dolphins where you would bet over at this price?
Teddy Bridgewater.
And that's why I asked that question, right?
So he's their backup, yeah.
Yeah, I knew you were going to answer with that question, with that response. And so, I guess, do you think that Mike McDaniel in his first year does not want to come out here with all of the weapons that they've added and, be like, all of a sudden go, oh yeah, this guy isn't an offensive wizard. So how quick is the hook going to be? It can't be something where they're going to sit there and lose with Tua when they have all this talent on their team, and there's no excuse for him not to be really good.
But how many of those games can they afford to lose and still go over early?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the answer would be like 3 or 4, right? But if they do that, then he's out of there. So, I mean, let's look at the Dolphins schedule, because I think, not to pull a Bill Simmons where you just read the schedule and
read out the wins.
Yeah, no one has a clue what the hell's going on. But knowing where they're at the beginning of the season and how you expect them to react, I think is interesting. And there's a reason to bring this up, because here are their first 4 opponents. And I believe you called this out on the last podcast, but it bears looking at again. It is at home versus New England, at Baltimore, home versus Buffalo, at Cincinnati. Tua being Tua from last year is 0-4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who do they then play? They play the Jets. Now, you could make an argument and say, oh yeah, they play the Jets, and that means that they're going to play the Jets and they're going to keep Tua in to see if he can play well against the Jets. On the other end of things, if Tua is really bad and they go 0-4, the Jets is the perfect team to bring Teddy Bridgewater in to play against. And you go, okay, we've got this thing back on track. Here's their schedule after that first 4. Jets, Vikings, Steelers, Lions, Bears, Browns, who knows who the quarterback for the Browns will be, Texans, Niners, Chargers, Bills, Packers, Patriots, Jets. So that middle part of the season, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. And you could make an argument that all 7 of those games are against bottom half to middle of the league teams. So, they're probably not going to go 7-0 there. They then close with Chargers, Bills, Packers, Patriots, Jets. So I think it's a good point, right? Where, I mean, I'm kind of making the argument, I guess, for you after trying to push against it, right? Which is like, that's tough. They're going to have some wins against some really good teams, either with Tua or when he gets canned, for them to get past 9 wins. Not to push it, but to actually get past it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that helps with the betting as well here. Here's a stat that I put in the article that I find really interesting. And this maybe plays to either to the overrating of Mike McDaniel or the underrating of Mike McDaniel. Last year on passes of depths between 10 and 19 yards, Jimmy Garoppolo had a 107.4 NFL passer rating, 12.3 yards per attempt, 10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He had 2 big-time throws and 15 turnover-worthy plays in that area. A 107. So if that offense, whomever we're giving the credit for, and I know that Hermsmeyer and Cole, talked about how they didn't think that Shanahan was a top 10 coach in the league, which I think it, has some validity as far as, some of the extra stuff. But on the field, the guy calls great plays. If you could turn 2 big-time throws and 15 turnover-worthy plays into a 107.4 passer rating, you're doing something right. Mm-hmm. I look at Tua in that same range, 7.8 yards per attempt, 5 touchdowns, 6 picks, 2 big-time throws, 9 turnover-worthy plays, but only for a NFL passer rating of 68.6. So, Shanahan's offense wasn't exactly working with a great player, and yet, they were able to produce production that I think we're all looking at and saying, yeah, you can live with that production in the NFL, right? Mm-hmm. That is the leaky thing. And to me, when I think about Teddy Bridgewater, the problem I have, and, if I'm thinking about the fat tail for this team, if you put in Bridgewater, you're not winning anything, right? Mm-hmm. You're getting to 9 wins, which, I think the Dolphins can Brian Flores because 9 wins and no playoff berth and no wins against great teams is not good enough, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, but that's the stick. That's the thing. So the 2 sticky things for me are: can you get better production out of Tua in the 10 to 19 range, even if he doesn't improve? Answer could be yes. It depends upon how much Mike McDaniel has learned from Kyle Shanahan, to be quite frank, right? And then the other question is, if Bridgewater comes in, do they just squeak it out to 9 wins? And 9 kind of meaningless bullshit wins, but your bet doesn't care how authentic those wins were.
It's very interesting, and there's one of the things I keep coming back to is the comparison between Tua coming out of college and, who does he remind you of? And you heard Jimmy G a lot. And I do think there's some really interesting comparisons there where Tua oftentimes does the patented Jimmy G where he throws a pass and it goes right to a linebacker and you go, what the hell, Yeah. At the same time, we may be undervaluing both the way that the Niners are constructed to take advantage of Jimmy G's abilities, and to a certain extent, maybe some of Jimmy G's abilities because of how great Kyle Shanahan is.
Yeah.
All of those things are, to kind of point out that it's not just turning a garbage quarterback into a good quarterback. It is all the other pieces that are required to do that. Now, it would stand to reason that what the Dolphins have with a guy like Jalen Waddle and a guy like Tyreek Hill and Mike Gesicki should materialize into making that offense, good. But there's some things that they don't have. The Niners have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. That is an important piece to this whole thing. And Jimmy G, say what you will, at least we know that he can execute what Kyle Shanahan is asking him to do. That is not necessarily something that we should have faith in Tua doing right from the get-go. And to be clear, not necessarily from Teddy Bridgewater either. So I do think it's a big question mark. But looking at their schedule and thinking through kind of the paths that it would take for them to eclipse 9 wins, in order, what do you have to believe? I think this is a good phrase for a lot of these. What do you have to believe to bet over here? You have to believe that Tua and that offense are beating, probably 3 to 4 top 7 teams. And that I think helps. That has helped me decide to put another unit on this bet because, right? So this is, I think this is a really good way for us to kind of a heuristic for us here. New England, Baltimore, Buffalo, Cincinnati, San Francisco, Chargers, Bills, Packers, Patriots again. I think that's 9 games Those are 9 games. All of those teams are top 10 teams.
Yeah.
So, right? So if they win all of their other games, and that's probably not going to happen. They've got to win 3 probably.
They're going to steal some games, which is Tua steal a game guy, especially given that the Dolphins with Tua at quarterback are very clearly a can lose a game you're supposed to win type of team with, the loss to like Urban Meyer in.
Can we also bring this up? Like, there are a lot of teams, we talked about one at the beginning here, that have bad karma on their side, don't deserve to win and get lucky this year. The Dolphins are up there. So if you're here to bet based on karma, which I can't endorse. I'm not saying that I would. It's kind of like the zigzag theory of gambling. I can't endorse it, but sometimes I do it. That would be an opportunity for the people.
Yeah, I think that there's also like a really good chance. So there's just like little ticky-tack things in the schedule that I don't like about them. Like, they face Cincinnati in week 4 on Thursday Night Football in a situation where the trend is that rookie head coaches do poorly on Thursday Night Football early in the season, and that's something that we've seen before. I'm not saying Zach Taylor's some genius or whatever, but I do think that like there is something to playing that Thursday night game early, the same way like David Culley last year, even against like Matt Rule was in year 2 and like they got killed on Thursday Night Football. And like, so there are reasons to sort of like not necessarily back the fish here. The thing is it's fade the fish is what I'm saying. Fade the fins. It's just too catchy not to do, guys.
Oh my God. Absolutely incredible.
Fade the fins.
Maybe you could get Jesus Christ to turn a couple of loaves and a couple of fish into to feed all of Miami.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to. I mean, fade the fins. So that's kind of so that was one I wanted to write up. I'm going to write up a few every so often during the course of the season here. I'm big fans of. The weird part is, here's a last thing I want to say, because I think we're going to talk a little bit about some more futures with inflation the way it is, right? Mm-hmm. And with cryptocurrency the way it is. I feel like there is some like currency risk insofar as going in the futures market that heavily right now. The season being 3 months away, if you have credit outs, that's great. But like credit outs even have like limits on them as well. So, especially if you're going to tail us on the CFL and the USFL coming up here, like you want to have money in your accounts. Like there is a part of these futures bets where, you don't necessarily have all the money in the world, interestingly.
I'm glad that we got inflation in here. By the way, happy Amazon split week to everybody.
Is that what's that?
All right, Amazon did a 20-1 split, and it took effect.
I see. Okay, I do have Amazon. I was not paying attention. Did that crater the price?
No, I mean the market as a whole obviously is kind of not doing great. I expected it. This is not.
But enough about DraftKings.
Yeah, enough about giving out financial advice. But I woke up on Monday and I was just checking, the market to see how it was going, and I was like, wait, is what happened to Amazon? Because like all of the market, a lot of the apps like weren't prepared for the split, I guess, and so it said like the percentage, the profit percentage on like Amazon was like thousands of %, and I was like, wait, this can't be right. And then I realized that the split had taken effect. So I think that the belief is that long term, because it went from a stock price that for the most of last year was like 3,000, right, and very recently was like 2,500 or something like that. So now all of a sudden the price is 120, and now retail investors can come in and buy full shares of that stock without having to take out a loan.
Gotcha. So that makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot of, retail investment places have allowed you to buy fractional shares for a while, but like, but it's still like
not mine though. Not mine. TD has not done that. I'm probably
Gotcha.
going to get shamed for using TD, by the way.
It's okay. I mean, the retail investment platforms are not exactly. I mean, we talked about the sports betting space last time, and how Barstool and Barstool is screwing over that one employee of VSiN and all this kind of stuff. We also have had in recent memory the fintech, the Robinhoods of the world, with the GameStop thing. That was the Ben Mesrich book I was talking to you about, and how they put stops and all this kind of shit, like though they have not exactly been above board over the last few years either. So
that's a very good point. That was the finance section of the podcast. We should start talking finance. That'd be great. Yes. By the way, if anyone wants a recommendation for a great account to follow Litquidity on Instagram.
Is it Rick Quibby?
Litquidity. So it's like
Litquidity. Okay.
Liquidity, but it's lit.
I think that should have been a show, like Lit.
They have a good podcast as well.
Litquidity that should be like a 5-minute Quibi show.
Well, it would be 5 minutes. We'd have 10 episodes, but they'd only get through the first 5 minutes.
Quibi wouldn't want it because it's probably good.
Yeah, exactly. I've come up with more hit shows than Quibi has. This is a fact of the matter. Okay, let's talk more props here. But before we do, reminder that you can get 25% off at pff.com using promo code forecast. A lot of really cool stuff that is going to be coming your way as a PFF subscriber this coming season. That obviously includes all the PFF locked article content, our fantasy football rankings and projections, which is getting an overhaul and it's looking really sick. And of course, our betting experience, which as well is getting an overhaul from back to front. So you'll want to be on the front end of getting all that great stuff. Plus, of course, data and grades for all of your favorite players and teams. So go to pff.com, use promo code forecast, FORECAST. It's a great gift to a football lover in your life, or maybe someone that isn't a football lover yet. You have a spouse,
just a lover
or a girlfriend,
in your life, possibly.
Yeah, exactly. Just a lover, and share with them what you love. Anyways, let's get into some season-long player props.
Somebody alerted me to this, which I thought was great. I think it was our friend Josiah Clark, Sharp Clark. He posted this because I had not seen them prior to a show. And it was after my CeeDee Lamb thing where he's like, CeeDee Lamb's 18-1 to lead the league in receiving. And I'm like, oh. So I look and there are these markets all over the place. So let's start with the league leader in passing yards prop. I have once won this with a bet on Jameis Winston.
You did.
Which felt really good one year. But right now, let me get your take on the top 6 guys.
Okay.
Herbert is 11-2. Brady is 7-1. Mahomes is 9-1. Stafford's 9-1. Burrow's 9-1. Josh Allen's 10-1, which is interesting, but I think I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's top 6. Carr's 10-1, and then Prescott is 12-1.
I love one of these. I absolutely
what say you?
Adore one of these, and the one that I adore is Derek Carr. Derek Carr is in the perfect position for to hit here. He has picked up a great receiver, the best receiver in the NFL, in fact. He already had a good receiving core. He now has, I would argue, one of the top, I'm not trying to leave anyone out here, but it's certainly a top 5 receiving core with Renfro, Adams, and Waller now healthy. And he is in a division where they are 4th in that division. That is incredible because they are actually a solid team. So he is going to have probably the best team that is going to be trailing. And let me remind you that their defense has great pass rush and not great coverage. So when you think about kind of a setup for success here as they play against teams with a great passing game, they should be in a position to throw often. And Derek Carr is going to have a little chip on his shoulder because they have added a lot. He thinks of himself highly, and they're 4th in that division. And there's going to be a chip on his shoulder. And guess what? There's going to be a chip on Devontae Adams' shoulder too, because the narrative is, Devontae Adams couldn't do it with anybody but Aaron Rodgers. And Derek Carr's thinking about that. Devontae Adams is thinking about that. Oh, and by the way, they picked up a coach with an offensive scheme that should be a hell of a lot better than average. So Derek Carr 10-1, that is the bet that I am placing right now.
I didn't even realize this, but it is batshit insane. For one, the running backs for the Raiders are terrible. Like I'm
How
not
dare you?
saying Josh Jacobs
How dare you?
is a bad player. It's just like the guy's 4 yards in a cloud of dust. Even the Raiders, they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. That sort of shows you what they believe.
You have a way of coming across, even when you're saying that you like the guy, that you just hate him.
Right.
You are just a hater.
But here's something. Hunter Renfrow in the regular season caught 103 of 128 targets. That is insane. And so that's like 80.5% catch rate, 8.1 yards per target, which is quite good. He had the 9 touchdowns. He had over 1,000 yards. It was a 17-game season, so 1,000 yards means a little bit less than what it used to. But Carr last season, 4,800 yards was a career high by quite a margin. He's only missed 2 starts in his entire career. I see it. I can see it. And I do think this plays into my thought process of them being bad. I think that they're going to be in shootouts. You look at the rest of the division, the Chargers have probably a good secondary. Chiefs are probably, weaker there than they have been in the past. And the Broncos, I don't think can be better than what they were last year. So I do think that makes sense. It's a good bet, George.
Which ones do you like? Was Carr, first off, one of the bets that you liked initially, and what else?
No,
what else do you like?
So the Josh Allen one's interesting to me because I think this is basically a product of them being so good that they're going to be up in games, and sort of like in the Mahomes style where, once the Chiefs got good, Mahomes stopped leading the league in passing because he didn't have to throw for 400 yards to put up with a bad defense as much. So that's kind of where my thought process goes for them. But the ones that I think could be the thing is Kyler Murray at 20-1. You read our friends at DraftKings. Kyler Murray at 20-1 is one that I think has a shot. And one that's a big time long shot, but I think I am going to bet it small.
What this is.
Carson Wentz at 40-1.
Oh no, that was not the one I was thinking. That's even crazier than the one I was thinking.
Carson Wentz. So that you have McLaurin, you have Jahan Dotson, you had Curtis Samuel, you have the tight end Logan Thomas, you have the running backs out of the backfield. You have a division where I think every team is better, which means again that your games against your division foes are going to be harder, which means there's going to be more passing than normal. Wentz is in the past. Let me look at Wentz once threw for 4,000 yards without a wide receiver having. Any guy having 5,000. His career high is 40, 4,039 yards, which is not great. That was the year that none of his receivers had more than 500. Did you know, by the way, that he only had 7 interceptions? He has 4 years with exactly 7 interceptions, and last year was his 4th. He's kind of had a weird career.
That's how scared people are.
Pro Football Reference approximate value gave Wentz his highest AV last year, which is again interesting given the narrative of I think most of us would rather pass a kidney stone than watch him play 17 games.
This is true. That is a bold take, sir. I'm not even going to address Carson Wentz. Everyone knows how I feel about Carson Wentz. I'm going to give you a couple long shots that I love, though. James Winston, by the way, is 25-1. That's not the long shot that I most like. Kyler Murray, I guess, is an interesting one. I would, he's going to run too frequently, I think, to really have that high of a passing yardage total. But here are a couple. So Trevor Lawrence is 28-1. That's another team that's going to be down a ton, and they have invested a crap ton in those receivers. Now, you could argue that they've overpaid, and they absolutely have, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to try and rationalize their overpayment. And Trevor Lawrence had such a crappy situation last year with Urban Meyer and that whole disaster. So that's one that I like from a long shot perspective. And here's an even longer one that I like as well, and that is Jared Goff at 50-1 for all of the reasons that we talked about previously with the Lions. So those are the ones that I'd bet right now: Derek Carr, Trevor Lawrence, and our guy Jared Goff. Shout out Dave Solfaro.
This one is the interesting one to me because I think it's going to be it's going to be like I don't see this one coming anywhere. So here's the running back with the most rushing yards: Jonathan Taylor 5-1, Derrick Henry 11-2, Dalvin Cook 15-2, Nick Chubb 8-1, Najee Harris 10-1, Joe Mixon 12-1, Javonte Williams 14-1, Antonio Gibson 16-1, and this is how bad it gets: Elijah Mitchell 18-1, Cam Akers 18-1. I don't know if I can advise a bet here. I like Christian McCaffrey 28-1, but like, is he going to stay healthy? Eckler 25-1, maybe. You know, he had a lot of volume last year, but they don't like to run the ball that much. Maybe J.K. Dobbins at 25-1. You know, Fournette 40-1, but like that's like, you know, he looks like a guard right now. So I don't know.
It's tough because what you're really trying to do here is predict the opportunities that they're going to have. Because you get down to some of these and you go, okay, well, this guy's going to split time. This guy's going to split time. There's no way they give this guy a full workload. There's no way they give this guy a full workload. There's no way they give this guy a full workload. And some of these teams that may give someone a full workload are terrible. Like David Montgomery. I'm like, yeah, sure, but they suck. So it's going to be really hard for him to lead the league in rushing yards. One that I think is interesting. There's a few that I do think are interesting. Javonte Williams at 14-1. He's really freaking good. They obviously now have, you know, he was a missed tackle monster in college and he was in the NFL last year. And it's not as if you're looking at Melvin Gordon and going, oh yeah, like they have this guy so they can feed Melvin Gordon. They have an offense that is going to be really appetizing for a running back in that outside zone scheme, and they're going to have a quarterback that people are going to focus on. So, you know, if you think about the makeup of a player that could be given the opportunity, it's a young guy. There's no reason for them right now to curtail his touches, and they should be in a lot of competitive games. So I like that one quite a bit at 14-1 if I'm going to bet one here. I don't like Elijah Mitchell. You know, I think it's insane that Cam Akers is 18-1. You know,
is
you look
Cam Akers good? That's right. The thing I don't get.
You look at Zeke Elliott at 22-1. It's like, I mean, yeah, I get that they're going to give Zeke the ball, but have you watched Tony Pollard play? Like, you know, come on, man. Like that's ridiculous. So yeah, I think it's a real challenge. This is how crazy this, you know, how little people know. Like Lamar Jackson is 40-1. I'm like, I don't know, you know, like I think Jonathan Taylor should be the favorite, obviously. Dalvin Cook, like, you know, he's going to get injured, so I don't know how much you want to do that. Derrick Henry's coming off an injury. You think they're just going to feed him unconsciously? Like, I don't know about that. So I'm taking a long shot if I'm betting any of these.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to receiver. By the way, Cooper Kupp just got an extension that's going to pay him $110 million over the next 5 years.
Good for him.
Good for him. He is currently 7-1 to lead the league in receiving. Justin Jefferson 8-1. Travis Kelce at tight end is 12-1. Jamar Chase 12-1. Devontae Adams 12-1. Tyreek Hill 14-1. Stephon Diggs 14-1. Deebo Samuel 16-1. CeeDee Lamb, the aforementioned, 18-1. Mark Andrews, a tight end, is tied with Mike Evans and AJ Brown at 20-1. Which ones of those top guys do you like?
Can I just say, I think it's fraudulent that CeeDee Lamb has longer odds than Deebo Samuel. Like, I think that's like, if I were running a trading desk and I saw that, I would not fire, but I would very much question the person's hypothesis on that. I mean, first off, Deebo Samuel is not the number one pass catching option on his team.
In a perfect world, he is not. No.
Right. On a team that has a quarterback who could be only a runner, or not only a runner, but like could be predominantly a runner, on a team that runs the ball, like versus CeeDee Lamb, who is 1,000% the number one target on a team that's going to throw a lot, on a team with a quarterback that you know what you're going to get. Like, bananas to me. And so, I mean, obviously the CeeDee Lamb one at 18-1, I think is a no-brainer. That's 1,000% the one that I would go with. you look down the list, and I think that the interesting one to me, as I move down the list, is Amari Cooper at 35-1, and I think this goes along with our hypothesis at the beginning. Like, this could be Baker Mayfield for a while. They don't have any other options there, but Stefanski's offense, I have confidence. And here's the thing. Amari Cooper, look, everyone's going to go, if Baker Mayfield plays, there's no way he and Amari Cooper click because he and Odell Beckham didn't click. They are different types of route runners. And Amari Cooper's pinpointedness in the way that he gets to spots and runs routes, I think could be something that Baker Mayfield figures out how to use. And so, at 35-1, they obviously are, interested in him having a good year based on the move that they made for him. So I think that's the one down the list that I'd be interested in. Are there any long shots that interest you?
Man, it might be something like T. Higgins 35-1. Just because I think that passing offense will be good.
Mm-hmm.
And it might just be him instead of Chase, or Chase might have a sophomore slump or something like that. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, I think are going to split things up too much. And I think that the Chargers are going to be ahead a little bit more than normal. So I think it's going to be less volume for them. Mooney is the only guy that folks are throwing to in Chicago at 40-1. That could have some legs, but no, I think it's Lamb for me. And then from there,
any other favorites?
Yeah. I mean, from there, Kelsey is always a threat, and you don't have Tyreek anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That could be one. People are going to double team Kelsey. I think it's hard to double team a tight end. So if the Chiefs sort of get into a rut like they did last year on offense, then there's a chance possibly that they go ahead. And play, play it through Kelsey, and he gets so many yards just by volume alone, especially considering the Chiefs aren't going to be as good this year, right? That's baked into, I think, to the analysis there, is that they're not going to be quite as good as they're normally used to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the ones that I was thinking about, just because it's correlated certainly with the bet that we talked about with quarterbacks, is Devontae Adams at 12-1. I mean, what would Adams' odds be here if he were still on the Packers?
Probably favorite.
That was kind of my thought too.
He'd be 7-1 or so.
Is that fair?
Cup's the honest to God. If you think about 7-1 means a 12.5% chance that he's going to have the season he had last year. I actually don't think that's a terrible percentage. It's just in these markets, if you're going to bet favorites, you're giving up some value all the time, so
mm-hmm.
that's even Jefferson. So 8-1, that's 1/9, right? So that's 11%. I mean, Jefferson gets open sort of in every single way, shape, or form. I
mm-hmm.
think the concern that I would have if I were betting Jefferson in this market is the Vikings have a weaker record than they did, or weaker schedule than they did last year. If they're actually a good team, I don't think it's because Jefferson's a league-leading receiver. You know what I'm saying? I think it's because they have a weaker schedule, and take from this how everybody wants it. But if you take Stephon Diggs, right, the Vikings' previous best receiver. 2018. He got 149 targets in a year they went 8-7-1 and struggled as an offense. In 2019, where they were better, he had 94 targets. And that was because they ran the football, and they got, and he averaged 8 more yards per catch. So then it ended up he had more yards. But if I'm the Vikings and I look at his, I asked the question, how much of Jefferson's otherworldly record-setting numbers in the first 2 years of a career are because the Vikings were 15-18 as a team, and they needed to just drop back and heave the ball to the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I tend to agree with that. The problem that I also have, look, I just don't think either of the favorites are great value for a lot of reasons that you just illustrated, which is the Vikings and Rams having really good seasons. I'm not sure it has to point in the direction of those guys blowing up, right? Like people are going to pay both those guys a ton of attention. I could see other members of that team, especially because you think about, the coaches that they have there, they should be able to spread the wealth around. So if I'm going to bet any of the guys that are lower than 20-1, like Adams, I think for the same reasons that you'd bet Carr 10-1, makes a ton of sense there. That is our podcast. Do you have any recommendations for the people today?
I actually I'm gonna pimp another podcast in our network. I really did think that the unexpected points with Kevin Cole yesterday with Josh Hermsmeyer was great. Josh has been a frequent guest on our show, and he's been wonderful. Sort of every time that he's been on. I thought they went through and each of them gave 5 kind of like, hey, here are hot takes about the NFL. I thought they did a good job. It was fun. I've been running more now, and I hate running, but that was it somewhat made it enjoyable.
You call that running?
You didn't see it.
I've seen you run before, but no, I had to get that one in.
George forgets that I was an all-conference track athlete in high school.
It's
this
really
very state, right?
It's amazing that I've managed to forget that,
Mm-hmm.
But kudos to you for trying to run a little bit. And that podcast is on. I've seen a couple of clips now because they're out on Twitter. It is on my to-do list to listen to because anytime Josh Hermsmeyer gets on the mic, you need to listen. I have a couple of recommendations from my weekend spent in San Diego for people that are there. These are all food recommendations. I'll go in order of how I would recommend them. And now I'm forgetting the name. So I'll give 2 names I remember, and then I'll give a couple more on Sunday here. A place in La Jolla called Himitsu. Really, really fantastic sushi. I enjoyed every part of the meal that I had there, including the dessert, which was really, really, really good. Could not recommend it more. And then a place that is in, I think it's technically in Cardiff, which is a little further north. It's right by Encinitas. A place called Waverly was fantastic as well. Everything I had there was delightful. So those are 2 places if you're in San Diego. I've mentioned a couple of places there that are more in downtown previously. These 2 are a little more in the suburbs. So both of those are fantastic. And I'll have 2 more for everybody on Sunday because I just need to remember what the names are. A poke shop in Pacific Beach that was fantastic, and then kind of like a sandwich breakfast place in Encinitas for you guys. So if you're in Southern California,
for a couple more for the fellas.
Yeah, exactly. That was our podcast. We'll be back on Sunday. We love y'all. Peace.